Do a roll call. We're zone 1,
Present.
zone 2, here, zone 3, here. And zone 4 is absent due to illness, and the mayor is present. Also present, city attorney and city administrator. Now, over to you, city administrator. Thank you.
Okay. The purpose of this meeting, as you indicated, is to deal with a recommendation from myself as city administrator to call for termination of employment of the gentleman, Sherrod Weitz. Mr. Weitz was hired on September 8th of this year. He is presently on probation with pay as a result of my recommendation of termination. The city administrator and myself believe that Mr. White's continued employment is not in the best interest of the city. Now, that having been said, I need to make several other comments to you. The purpose of probation in our personnel manual calls for a 6-month probation. The purpose is to have a trial period during which time both the employee and the employer can judge each other. Sometimes employees will be disillusioned with the employer and will quit. Sometimes it's the other way around. But it is a trial period. Each has a chance to demonstrate whatever they said they would be doing going into the relationship and judge it accordingly. I have briefed each member of the city commission individually on what I'm telling you plus more, so that they are somewhat informed prior to any comments that may be made either by myself or Mr. Weiss. We have witnessed on 17 different occasions issues that cause us to believe that the continued employment of Mr. Weiss is not in the best interest of the city. We've actually formalized 3 of those as formal write-ups under the Personnel Code, which I will tell you is not necessarily required for a probationary employer. It is a way of doing progressive discipline. When you have a full-time employee, you will then first start out with verbal notifications, you go into written notifications, and finally, if it's called for termination. That's not necessary for the probationary period, but we did follow that same procedure just so we would have substantiation that we're not acting arbitrarily and capriciously. So we do have 3 instances where we have actually written up Mr. Weiss for violations of either federal law or state policies or simply bad behavior in one case. I have personally met with Mr. Weiss on 4 separate occasions, actually more than that if we include group meetings with the Public Works Department, but individually I have met with him on 4 separate occasions to discuss the issues that brought us to the conclusion that we have today, that we need to terminate the relationship. And on each occasion, and particularly this last Monday, a week ago today, when I finally placed him on leave with pay, I said to him, I really feel very badly about what's happening with this relationship. Anytime you have a situation like this, it's not always the failure or strictly the responsibility of the employee who has failed. It very often, in this case, partially the responsibility of management. There is something was there something that I could do? And that's the reason I dedicated 4 separate meetings to this gentleman. So the last one, I said, we've got to come together in these things. I mean, this is just not working. I don't know what the problem is, and please tell me. And we never were able to come to that conclusion. So I really had no choice but to terminate the relationship, or more correctly, to recommend to you that we terminate the relationship. And let me just say a little bit about one of the underlying factors, and it has to be recognized too, and I recognize it. If you don't, I'm sure you probably do recognize it. We have been working essentially without a public works director now for a considerable amount of time. We've been through a number of individuals who have been promoted to those positions as acting, and for whatever reason, they have left voluntarily from the city. The ad was finally placed in the newspapers perhaps 2 months ago, and we have received about 26, I think the last time was 26 applications, and I expect to have a recommendation to you on the 12th of January for a public works director. And that is an important part of the equation. I don't know that it would have changed the outcome of the discussion today, but it is something for the future that would help ensure that we don't have a similar recurrence of today's events. I think with that, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, there's one individual I should introduce to you. He's sitting behind me in the front row. Mark Levitt is with the law firm Ford Harrison, not to be confused with Harrison Ford, but Ford Harrison. They are an international labor law firm. And of course, we have our own city attorney with us as well. And each has a part of the equation. And Scott, of course, is familiar with the charter and procedures and our personnel code. And the labor law is the purview of Mr. Levitt. With that, I think unless you have any questions of me, Mr. Mayor and the commission, be appropriate at this time to call on Mr. Weitz and allow him the opportunity to present whatever he cares to present to you for your consideration this morning. This afternoon, Steve.
Sherrod, if you would like to speak to us, this is your opportunity.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherrod Weitz. First of all, I want to start by saying, I understand I was on a probation period, but my question is, who do I go to if I work in a hostile work environment? I have no HR or anyone to go to if I have any issues. And I disagree with that whole, we've had 4 meetings, four separate meetings. And the last one we did have, I asked him, I was like, I do not feel comfortable having a meeting, can I have a representative? And I specifically told him no. So why would I have a meeting with someone that first time we were in school, when I come to you, the first thing you said to me was, we're gonna start with a clean slate. And then when I was like, what do you mean a clean slate? He was like, well, nothing goes from here on. And I was like, okay. So I was like, well, I like to learn from my mistakes. So can you please tell me what were the complaints and things that were made against me? And he was like, oh, there were no complaints and everything. So if there were no complaints, why was I threatened the first time? Like, I understand they want to say I have these issues of taking orders or whatever, but this all started from the last hurricane we had. We had a meeting, and we were told to do some work with another employee that was Austin here. We were told, hey, we need to go do this work here. We did it, we completed it. So we went to this location where fire hydrant was broken. And we were asked to go get some rocks. So we went and got the rocks. And when we got back here, we went on our way back, Sharon texted, hey, we need some trees removed from the cemetery. We're like, well, we're in the middle of moving rock right now, keep it sending Bob and David. And then Sharon never responded back. So probably about 15 minutes later, we get Lee coming down. Lee comes down, pull me Austin up to the front. Hey, you guys, okay, things are not going to work. You guys have 2 options. You can either quit or you put in a 2 weeks notice. And we're like, well, what are we putting in a 2 week notice? What did we do wrong? And then after he told us, it was pretty much because we didn't go to the cemetery to cut trees, but we were in the process of a job already, a mission at the hand right then. So, and then we showed him the message we sent Sharon, and then he was like, oh, okay, I guess Sharon can tell him to respond back. I don't know if there was a lack of communication or what the issue was. So then he's like, well, we'll have a meeting on Monday. Okay, Monday comes around, me and Austin went up there numerous times to, hey, can we have that meeting? And then I'm told, oh no, we'll have this meeting when I'm ready. Okay, so we left alone, the meeting never happened. Probably a week later, I went on leave for a thing I had already planned. And I come back, they relieved Austin. And then that's when Austin called me, like, hey man, they just let me go. I came back, that's when me and Lee had our first real meeting, when he told me, hey, we're gonna start with a clean slate and everything. And then I told him, I was like, okay, Lee, So now David's my supervisor. I was like, how is that chosen that make him my supervisor? Were there qualifications that were needed? What determination was used to appoint him that? I was like, if it was based off seniority, Bob should have been our supervisor, which is another employee there. And he was like, well, Bob didn't want it. So therefore you did offer the job to multiple people, but it was never offered to me. And I'm just curious, or it was never offered to Austin, so why wasn't it offered to us? So what was his reasoning for choosing that particular person if we're both in our probation period would be the supervisor of me? Or these are just some of my concerns here. So it's like, what am I supposed to work with if I have no one to go to yet? Give me no one to complain if I have an issue about anything. I can't talk to anyone. Can't come to you guys because you guys can't do nothing unless y'all all together. So who do you talk to? And then therefore, for the longest I had no supervisor apparently. So I was assuming Sharon was my supervisor, but I guess apparently she's not the supervisor. She's just an able-bodied just sitting there in where I work at. So I don't know what you guys want to work with here.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. And I don't want to interrupt you. I want you to be able to say whatever you want to say. I hear your frustrations. I'll start in with a little bit of a unprepared speech. I would like to say that individuals of the commission have talked with, of course, the city administrator and also our multiple counsel here about what we should do as members of the commission. And the best thing for both the city and for you, I believe, is to simply part ways with as little said officially as to why, as little said the better. It's just a probationary period that it didn't work out. I think that, with the less said, the better. It doesn't put any black mark on your record. I think that, when I was in business for many years, we came down to the point where with former employees, the only thing we ever said about somebody's employment with our business was that, yes, they worked in our facility from this date to this date, and they did this job. We didn't say why they left. We didn't say how good a job they did. That was all we said. And the law, because of liability being the way it is, you can't say anything nice or mean without opening up yourself for potential litigation. It's the law is just so difficult to work within that you have to limit yourself a lot. So as commissioners, I think we need to kind of abide by that and not put the city in jeopardy by saying anything good or bad. That's kind of a shame, but that's kind of where we end up headed.
I would like to hear the good and bad. I'm not worried about the whole repetition of being. I would like the city to tell me what I did wrong. I would like y'all to tell the community what I did wrong, because I still like to learn from my mistakes. So if there's something that they didn't like about my work ethic or whatever, I would like for it to be said.
Well, I appreciate that, but again, under advice of counsel, I'll go back to what I got years ago in my management stuff, is that if you say nice stuff about somebody and then about the next person you refuse to say anything at all, that can be construed as being negative. The law ties our hands a lot, and that's very frustrating. I get it. I will say that, Sherrod, you and I had a couple of fairly lengthy conversations. One being that one hurricane day where you were talking about over there when the water main broke. We talked for a while that day, and that was right kind of at the height of some of this frustration. And I developed a healthy level of respect for you. You're a good man. You're a good worker in many ways, and I appreciate the fact that you are taking this seriously. You take your reputation seriously, and you want it to be a very open thing to show that you want to protect yourself and that's a very laudable thing. I appreciate that you want that, but our hands are a bit tied. We're not saying anything bad.
Right.
We're saying it didn't work out, and that's the nature of prohibition.
Okay, so Lee's making that decision, I didn't fit well, correct? Or what do we base it off of? Because who observed it is my question.
Well, the recommendation has come from the city administrator to the commission,
Okay,
and
I've probably seen Lee 5 times since I've worked here. So what does he base it off of? Because me and him never worked together. So what does he base it off of? Who's giving him this information? Is what I'm asking.
that's a valid point, and that's about all I can say. It's not, I know it's not gonna be a satisfying answer. I'm not gonna have any real satisfying answers for you today, because the city's in a position, as the city administrator said, we've been in this position for a while, where we've rolled over a couple of different, public works directors, so a couple of them very short term, and it has left
And we haven't
I don't think-
gotten nominated yet. I mean,
well, it could be, many things. It could be the fact that it's government and it's difficult. It could be Lee, it could be me, it could be the fact that we have a commission that's in charge of hiring. One of the things that I was hoping to do with the last charter amendment was to get the commission out of the equation, which I think would be actually better, than it would be one person rather than a committee that would be in charge of things. I think that works better from a legal standpoint and from a direct standpoint for an employee with their supervisor. They know exactly who they're talking to. And they have that chain of command much better established. But,
Well, Mayor, just so that the audience knows, all the comments you made, you are not speaking for me because my hands are not tied.
I understand that, and I will give opportunity to the commission to speak. I will. And,
that's all I had to say.
well, sure, I appreciate it, and, I'm sorry that this has happened this way. I know that there's no great way to characterize it, other than to say, I'm sorry it's worked out this way. I have a lot of respect for you, and a lot of respect for the conversations that we had and what you said in those, and, we will, hopefully we'll be able to part friends and maybe stay friends. What's that?
That apology would feel more genuine if we fix the issues and start getting rid of great workers. I would feel like that apology is much more true. But if we don't fix those issues, we're going to just continue to lose great workers.
And point well taken. I cannot disagree with that. So I understand how the apology rings hollow when you don't follow it up with facts and information, and I get that. Our hands are tied. I really do believe that too, by the litigious nature of our society right now. And Sherrod, I know you're saying that that's not your mindset, and I appreciate that. But it is the world we live in, and we have been sued before on employment things, and we can't ignore that. I know a lot of people want to speak today, and everybody will get a chance to be heard. We'll have 3 minutes. I don't want to get into a back and forth. Often when we have things on the agenda that are various things that various line items on the agenda that people are speaking towards, we end up in conversations. I would appreciate it, Commission, if we can avoid that. I think it would be potentially quite detrimental. So if we can avoid that, again, I'm one elected official up here, but I am tasked with running meetings, and I will endeavor to give people their 3 minutes uninterrupted and take some notes. If somebody says needs to be addressed, please take some notes, and I will give the commission also opportunity to speak and address things. And well, I guess we'll start on the stack. The first blue card I got was from Vernon Burke.
Bernie Burton, 690 West Ohio Avenue. I was outreach from, I spoke to Sean a couple times, Sherrod. I've known him since he was in high school. Former military veteran, he served his country. He is probably more qualified than some of the people he's working with. What was said was initially, Lee said that there were 17 items that he had. He brought up, he said 17. I just found this in the hallway. I don't know if it was yours or not, Lee, but it's got 16 things that highlighted that any one of them should have been written up. If you got 16 write-ups, 16 items that could be written up, that could be grounds for termination, or in this case, his probation. He didn't make the probation, but I don't see it that way. One of the things that you said, Cameron, Mayor, is that you don't have HR, at least that's what Sean said, Sherrod said. You don't have HR, you don't have a director of public works, you don't have anybody training him. If you have anybody training him, you don't have anybody to reprimand, to give him a reprimand or a correction. Now, city turnover of employees, we're not in a position that we can keep turning over employees. And each time you lose an employee, the next employee that comes behind him, he's either going to want more money. Not only is he going to want more money, but he's going to have to take the time to find out the infrastructure. How does the process go? So if you got somebody here who is qualified, who is dedicated, and all of those blue cards that came up there, I don't think those blue cards was coming up here to tell you or this commission that we really need to get rid of this guy. I think I think he's done the work that people recognize and the integrity that he brings to the city. And I won't even talk about that 800-pound gorilla in the room, that he's the only black employee that you have in the whole city. So these things do have a detrimental rebound effect on the community because they know this young man. I don't know if you know it or not, but the pavilion at Melissa Park is named after his grandfather. So he's got roots in this community. People that are here now are here because they look like the people he worked with. Now, if I had a guy that was I was working with and he was creating a problem for me, I wouldn't want him up there. But I'm not speaking for these people, but I'm just going to say that it appears that you as a city commission really need to take this to heart. One of the things that this before, I was assuming that this would be a fair hearing and then a vote would be taken based on what he heard, based on the issues that are brought forward. So far, the mayor's been speaking, and Roger had to correct it, but he's not speaking to him. So at some point, you all as commissioners, because it only takes 3 of you to say yes or no. That's the one thing about being in the commission. It takes 3 of you. Thank you.
The next blue card I have is from Kurt Smith. And then after that will be from I can't quite read the right, but Mayon Ross, or anyway, you'll be after Mr. Smith. If you would state your name and address for the record.
Kurt Smith, 491 West Delaware Avenue. I've been in management since I was 19, some sort of supervisory position. I don't know what the young man has done or anything like that. But the issue comes down to leadership. That's where it comes down to. Where did Lee fail him? And Lee actually said that. How did I fail him? And take that into consideration. And the reason why I say that is the young man has nobody to report to. He has nobody to go to. If he felt he had a hostile work environment, who does he go to? To the person possibly being hostile to him? You guys have a big decision to make, because I'm pretty sure there'll be an attorney that will take this case. If you do deem to terminate him, which would cost the city even more money. Somebody's contract, if I'm not mistaken, is coming up in February. And I think that's where the changes need to be made, is right there. Because it all starts with leadership. And I'm not talking about you, Pop, for one reason, but the person who sits downstairs in his office. He has to lead. And think about it. What has the turnover been over the last year? How many people have we lost? How many people have pointed the fingers to the person downstairs? And you really need to take that into consideration. In the company that I work for, when people repeatedly complain about management, guess who goes? The management, not employees. Roger, thank you for standing up and being your own voice. I appreciate that and making that clear. And like I said, I'll tell you when you're doing well and when you're not, so thank you for doing that. But the rest of you out there really take this into consideration, because you're opening yourselves up to something I don't think the city can afford to get into. All right, and that's all I got to say. But like I said in the beginning, it starts at the top, and I don't mean you fly. It starts with management. And what has the turnover been over the last 12 months, 18 months? All right, we lost a few good people because of that. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next will be, I guess, Monroe or Ms. Ross. I'm sorry, I can't read your name. And after that will be Alan Cook.
Good afternoon.
If you would state your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Marjorie, last name Ross.
Marjorie, okay.
Yes, I'm
Thank
from
you.
the Revolving Door Ministry, and I have a issue that comes up when we have justice for workers that are not being treated fairly. My position with this, with Mr. White is, number one, I listened to the complaints that were given by my issue that really bothers me. Number one, why would the city have to go get an employment lawyer if there has not been a lawsuit? Number two, if you're sitting here and you're listening at a gentleman that is saying what they have done wrong, and our issue is number one, he was not hired unless someone would direct me when it comes to affirmative action. He was hired because of his capabilities, and he had the establishment to be able to finish a job. But if you give me a job and I'm listening to you, sir, saying what happened to you years ago, things are changing every day in management and other employees and the way we handle things. But my issue is, if he's a gentleman that is trying to take up his family, he's already put in his issue with going to the army or wherever, we kind of take those things into consideration when they are veterans or something else to try to give them more help than maybe you're giving someone else. But when I listen to what each and every one of you are saying, we're not hurting the city, you're hurting Sean. You're hurting Lake Kellam by the way you all are handling the situation. If I was to call the EEOC or anyone else, he has 1 year to file a complaint against you all. Why would you want to do that when you could take the whole pie and restructure the pie, give him an opportunity to prove himself? You only listen to what someone says, but if it was anybody at that position that they were out when he was working, how many of your city people have come in and said, hey, we don't want him back in our area? I don't think we have that on paper. But what I'm listening to, and I'm going to put God into the situation, that each man is equal and we need to give him a chance to prove himself. It should not be just the four of you decide what needs to happen to him. Number one, your management should be corrected. If you don't have a person that works in labor, if you don't have an HR, if you don't have a supervisor, who do I go to? That's causing a hostile environment. If it means that I have to go back and get a section or get some type of code, because I only have 3 minutes and I can stand up there for 10 hours and tell you what I think, thinking is not the issue, it's called planning. Why don't you all go back to the drawing board, figure out what Sean needs to do, figure out what a supervisor needs to do, then decide if you need a lawyer, because if we all get together, one can chase 1,000, two can put 10,000 to flight. We are all going to back him up, but we're not trying to criticize or threaten you. But the thing is, he's not being treated fairly because of the position that he's in and the position that you're in. If you have 26 applications saying that you need to go and find someone else, you should give him one application again, let him try and see, and then if he does wrong, you fire him. But he should not be fired on one man's word that has not done their job.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Next is Alan Cook, and after Alan will be Jennifer Mull.
Okay, sure.
If you would state your name and address for the record.
It's Alan Cook, 792 Oak Tree Lane. Now, looking around, when I first walked into the room, the first thing I was looking for was that gentleman's boss. That's what I was looking for. And I looked, and I said, where's Shannon? Where's the person that tells that gentleman what he has to do every day? Where is she? Now, another thing is, after being in business for so many years, and firing a lot of people, I've always had management that worked with the gentleman, no matter how bad or how it is, to put their 2 cents into it. Now, how many workers are here that work with this gentleman? We've got 2. We probably only have 3 people work for the city, right? But what I'm trying to get at is, I'd like to hear from somebody that worked with him and what the situation was. That gentleman, it's not fair to put him in this position. We should have a foreman that runs the show, we don't. So it's so discongruent, no matter what it is, if we had an organization here that knew what they were doing, maybe he would still be working. But I do think that was a big mistake not to have Sharon sitting here. So when he says something, she can back it up. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next is Jennifer Mullen, and then after her will be Ann Robbins.
Jennifer Mullen, 271 West New York Avenue. I just have a couple things to say. This is not your first time you've had resignations or resignation letters or people that were in this circumstance that had nobody to go to. There's been multiple hostile work environments over the last year and a half that you guys have not addressed, and you guys still don't have a personnel review board that our city charter mandates you guys to have. These employees have nowhere to go. They have nobody to speak to. And that is your responsibility as a commission to make sure that these employees have somebody to speak to. At this point, they have nobody. And it's not a new thing. It's been years since that personnel review board has been established. It has not. These people have had nowhere to go. They've had to resign. They've been forced to resign. They've been forced to do things they didn't want to do. And it is not fair to all of the employees, the current employees, the previous employees, for this to still be happening today. This is for you guys to correct as a team. And the person that's making all these decisions, it seems like the decision's already been made. The mayor sits up there and says, he's gonna be terminated. That seems like the decision's already been made. He's already talked to each individual one of you guys and told you what he wanted you to hear. It doesn't seem fair that he doesn't have anybody to go to. You can't go to a person who's in a hostile situation. You can't do it. You've gotta give these employees somebody to go to. It's not fair.
Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Next is Ann Robbins, and after Ms. Robbins will be Sean King. If you would state your name and address for the record, Ms. Robbins.
Ann Robbins, 129 Maple Lane. November the 8th was a deciding day in Lake Helen's history. The vote against the city administrator to hire and fire was strongly turned down by 902 people in this community. Didn't that give you guys any kind of incentive at all? Our people don't want him. Plain and simple, I tell the facts, and you guys all know it. I'm not gonna broad brush nothing. I went in his office about a month and a half after he was here. And I introduced myself, told him my history. Yeah, I have a little history. The situation that I discussed with him he told me that he would get back to me. I gave him 2 phone numbers. That was January 19th of 2020, and I have yet to receive a phone call back from him. And this man is gonna fire somebody that he probably wasn't even out on a job to know what the man did, and nobody has told us what he's done. But he didn't have anybody to go to, especially when somebody's holding a hammer over his head. God forbid you people, you're driving the nail in Lake Holmes' coffin, that's all I can say.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Sean King, and then after Sean is Austin Sprague. Mr. King, if you would state your name and address for the record.
I'm Sean King, 2484 West Farm Road, Atlanta, Florida. I'm also president of the West Rouge Grant NAACP, represent this area. First, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I've dealt with the city of DeLand, I've dealt with the city of Deltona, I've worked a lot with them. And I am very disturbed of what's going on today and what I heard last Monday. First address today, in the stance of counsel, right? There's a system called due process. And if you're going to have a counsel, he needs to have a counsel. By no means am I a counsel. I just dealt with the city of DeLand, city of Deltona. Haven't heard a lot from Lake Helen, except for a couple of times. I'm also concerned when Mr. Sherrod called me Monday. I was on the telephone listening to Mr. Lee speak to Sherrod, saying at that stage, Sherrod says, "What do you mean?" He says, "I'm firing you." Sherrod says, "Do you need me to turn in the key?" He says, "Yes, because I'm firing you." How I understand it, he cannot fire Sherrod. So at that point in time, the decision was made. I'm very concerned that you, when I listen to the people and the whole situation, of the reasoning of how we got here today. I offer my services to you. If there's a citizen review board that you need, we can find you for that. But my concern is, he told me before, 2 weeks earlier, about concern he had after the first fight. He was told that there was a truck that was not full, and he would not pass his truck as being full to get paid. He said he would not pass it because of his integrity, because he's a military person. But Lee told him to get ahead and let the truck go through, approve it. When he refused, he was told Bob to go and take his place. These type of issues, I'm very concerned with. The other issue was Austin. He said a supervisor told them, "You have 2 weeks to get your act together or resign and be terminated." Who does that? I've been in management for 30 years. Never once have I said that to any employee because of my own integrity, right? So when you have a person in leadership addressing new employees in this manner, I'm very concerned. There also goes to the question of who is his supervisor. Now I'm also concerned we have a lady named Sharon and her husband Bob, who are given tasks for Sherrod to do and not giving stuff for Bob to do. So I would hesitate for you guys to consider the move to termination and not give him his due process. Investigate these concerns. Look into these concerns. They are legitimate. Because if he comes to me, I have to pass on to somebody else. And you don't want to go through the problems that City of Deltona and the City of Atlanta. So I ask you to reconsider.
Well, thank you, Mr. King. Next is Austin Sprague, and after Austin will be Nancy Wood.
Oh, my name is Austin Sprague, and then Jimmy St. Myers, with me.
If you would, that's what we asked for, his name and address.
105 Street, on City Foot. Okay, so I have worked with Sherrod, and I've been here longer than Sherrod, and I have seen Lee maybe out in the field once, and that's when he came to try to terminate us on the tree in the cemetery, and that's about the only time. And then when it comes to work ethic, I've never seen anybody work harder than Sherrod. And I've been here longer than him, and he's taught me things that I didn't even know could possibly do, and I've been here longer than him. So it has nothing to do with his work ethic, so I don't know where they're getting, he has riots because he does his work and does his work hard. And as far as the termination goes, I would have been, if I was another person that has been fortunately fine, because at the point in time they came and gave me a meeting when Rod and I were supposed to both have a meeting together. And they waited for Sherrod to go on vacation, and then they brought me in with supposedly someone that I got appointed as our foreman a day before they fired me. It is David over there. And he sat in on the meeting, and all they could do was tell me that I'm not a fit for the team. But then at the same time, there's only 2 people on the team that are actually doing work when you have one sweeping the whole workshop with a house group, when we have multiple push brooms and we have air tanks that you can blow all the air out. And there's just multiple occasions where Ron and I go out and have to do all the work while those 2 go on a meaningless job as to fill a bubble, and it takes them 4.5 hours. And then when it came down to the forced firing, I was given an option to put in my resignation to get paid for 2 weeks and then take it to the commission. But then at that point, it's, why would I take it to commission when I take the chance to get fired right before Christmas? So at that point, I was pretty much a forced resignation, and this is a very hostile work environment. No matter what you do, whoever was with me or Sean was getting washed like a hawk, and there's no one to report to at all. Because they're all buddy in that office, so if you say one thing about someone, it gets directed back to the other person, and then it's a laugh about it, let's go out to lunch, and then we'll make them write up the next day for something stupid. So there's no chain of command whatsoever. And then at the end of the day, when we're done doing work, Sharon goes home at 2 o'clock, so after 2 o'clock, there's no one there in charge of us. So what are we supposed to do when we get done with our assignments at 2 o'clock? Do you guys want us to just sit in the public works building and wait for a couple to come in, or what do you want us to do? Because at the end of the day, there's no one there to actually supervise us or give us anything to do. Anything that I have been trained on has been self-trained on by myself, or that man right there, Daniel has helped me learn it, or Sherrod. Those are the only 2. There's no other chain of command. There's people that don't even know what they're doing out there. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strait. Next is Nancy Weary, and then Kelly Kraska.
Nancy Weary, 435 West Delaware. I don't even know where to begin. The 4 of you have the opportunity to turn this around and do the right thing. I can come up here and tell you, on behalf of my husband and myself, we have employed this man. He is the model employee that anyone would be proud to have in their employment. He is on time, he is capable, he is polite. He's everything that this city needs, and we need people, more people like him, to work for us and to represent us. What is happening here? How many people have we lost under toxic environment in the last 8 months? 8 months alone, not to mention year and a half. Something has got to change. That is what you all are elected to do, is to serve us. Look at this room. Have you ever seen this many people come out and stand up for another person? I ask you to do the right thing. Keep them employed.
Thank you, Ms. Weary. Next is Kelly Kraska, and after Ms. Kraska is Paulette Smith.
Kelly Kraska, 616 John Street. I have some questions. We have a personnel board. Why do we never utilize them? I mean, this question's been asked many times. The board is in the charter, it is a requirement, but yet we never send anything through to them. I don't think they have met since the board was created with the staff, with the volunteers that they have now. I don't believe they've ever seen anybody on that. If I'm wrong, please let me know I'm wrong. As far as I'm aware, we have never utilized a personnel board, which is required in the charter. I'm just really disappointed. I'm disappointed in you, Cameron. the lack of empathy. We have a man who is a veteran, who is a hard worker, who is respected by this community. Where's the reason? He's asking for a reason. He's not given a reason. He's getting a lot of the legal mumbo jumbo. Now, I'm not speaking on behalf of the other three commissioners sitting here because they haven't spoken yet, except for Roger, who said you don't speak for him. But something's got to change. Because there's been a lot of turnover, especially in public works. And now, what do we have? Do we have 2 employees or 1? There's another question. Are we having temporary hires right now? So, the other question is really quick. There's a rumor going around that a truck was missing from Public Works. I inquired about an asset list of our recent assets. It has not been.
Point of order, that's really not on the agenda.
Oh, but I have a couple of seconds left. But from my understanding, that has now been returned with missing parts and spray paint over the logo, and they had to be towed back. So where did that go? Thank you.
And next is Paulette Smith, and yours is the last 2 cards. If you would state your name and address, thank you.
Paulette Smith, 840 West Keepline Road, Lake County, Florida. First, I said I wasn't getting up to say anything. But, when, Sean made the statement that he was on the phone with Sherrod and he bought the keys, well, with him and Lee had a conversation. All this kind of took me by surprise. I was in the Lee office, I want to say maybe last Tuesday or Wednesday, meeting with him on something else. And Sherrod came in and handed him the keys. And I said, what's this all about? Lee said, I asked for the key. He said, he's giving me the keys. I said, why? He said, because I asked for them. I was on the charter review committee, and yes, we did say that we was trying to approve of the city administrator to be able to hire and fire. So unfortunately, that was not passed. So I'm trying to see where did we get, or how did we get to the point now that the city allowed the administrator to fire someone, and then he came to the commissioners and gave y'all his side of the story instead of us having an emergency meeting maybe last Wednesday or Thursday when this first happened. Instead of giving y'all time to get your stories together, you know I'm gonna tell you how I feel. So you can look at me crazy, I don't care. You know that.
I'm not looking at you.
Okay, I'm just letting you know, you know that. Okay.
Excellent.
But, we just gotta do better. We gotta do better as a city. We gotta do better as a commissioner. We are the people that vote all y'all in. And if y'all showing us this, why would we vote for you? Just, let's keep it real. Like I told y'all before, you come to our community, you come to us when you want us to vote you in, but then you fail us. Heather, do you want to be a fairy? Roger, do you want to be a fairy? Karen, do you want to be a fairy? Rick, do you want to be a fairy? Rick, you've been around a long time, so you know a lot of these people. So we got to do better as citizens of Lake County. We got to get it together. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Yeah, I did have a bunch of notes of things people said, but I don't want to go first. I do want to give the commission an opportunity to speak if you want to say anything. Again, I can't tell you what to say. I would never tell you what to say. But I would encourage you to remember that we don't want to say anything disparaging, because we are representatives of the city, and we've been cautioned about that. We have seen that by the commission or the city before, when things were said on this, So we have to be careful about what we say. And I say that to the commission, but I'm also saying that to y'all. It's the smallest of comments from anybody up here leaves the city open. And it makes us have to be so careful about everything we say. I apologize for that, but I didn't create that environment. Y'all didn't create it either. Our grand legal system has created it over time. But that's where we live. So we can't change that. We can wish it was something different, but wishes don't make things different. So anyway, I hope y'all have some notes or things you'd like to say, but I'll start with the zone one.
I'd like Roger to go ahead because I think he
Okay.
spoke up first.
You can defer, that's fine.
Would you like to go first, Roger?
Doesn't matter to me. I've got a lot to say.
Good. I'll give you the room because I don't have a lot to say. This is what, I have one question. How long is, Mr. Shiraz, when does his probation terminate?
3 months from now.
From right now? Okay.
Well, approximately 3 months.
All I know from running a business forever is when you have an employee and employer not happy, somebody's gonna go. Period. So, me personally, what I would like to do, because I've heard information from people that I trust, and I have conflicting information. So I need to be able to soul search and find out for myself what's really the truth. With that said, I never laid off an employee before Christmas. This particular employee is not really being laid off, he just failed the probationary period. That's the way I have to look at this, because that's the reality of it. With that said, I would prefer an opportunity to be able to look at the whole system and with the commission, decide what direction we want to go in earnest. And so it doesn't negatively impact Sherrod. I would be interested in letting him be on paid leave until we have the time to sort this out, figure out where we're going. Personally, I could lay this on my feet because I've said vocally before, we don't have an HR officer, we need one. I said when Ricky Mullen turned into his resignation, we need somebody here immediately. So I'm gonna hold myself accountable for this because what I see here is a failure of communication, a failure of leadership, and that goes from top to bottom. And it starts with me. So I'm not prepared to fire anybody, lay off anybody, or end their probationary period today. That doesn't mean I don't reserve the right to do it at some time. But I think the commission really has to look at the whole system that we have in place.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Vassar. Commissioner, as you know, I will say one thing because I can't stop myself. I don't appreciate your implying that I'm telling you what to say or not allowing you to speak. Here is your opportunity to speak, sir.
You did say that, speaking for the commission, our hands are tied. No. I went to a different leadership class than you did. State law does not tie our hands. State law spells it out.
You can say everything you want and then.
Years ago,
Go ahead, sir.
Years ago, there used to be a law that a probationary employee could be fired just because he was a probationary employee. And businesses used it to be able to keep the low cost of employment down. State law came back and says, no, you gotta have a reason to fire them. Lee presented what he believed were some reasons. Because of COVID and a lot of other issues that have come up, state law is favoring more towards, or the court system is favoring more towards the employee than it is the employer. So our hands are not tied. And we are allowed to make decisions. And I've got a lot of questions I need first answered before I can carry on. Who is our HR representative?
We each carry multiple titles. As you know, I'm the treasurer, I'm the city clerk, I'm the city administrator, I'm the planner, all by charter. And I think I'm something else too, I'm not sure what it is. We all carry multiple titles because we have a very small staff. I've told you all before that the city of Ponce Inlet, which is about the same size as we are in terms of population, they have a staff of 44 people doing it, we have 18 people doing it. And it makes all of our jobs that much more difficult. In addition to being the assistant city clerk, Dominique is also the HR director, does all the payroll functions and items like that. She also served, I guess you could say, the IT director, since she's the only person who knows how to fix a lot of our IT problems without calling our consultant. So we all have various roles to play within the organization.
Okay, the next question is, after the first Austin, I thought it was Austin Casa, who was the supervisor of Public Works?
The first person after Rick Mullen was Seth. We call Seth.
It was after South Bay and after the first Austin.
And okay, I'm confusing myself. There was Seth, and then there was Austin, and then the number one. And basically, I assumed that role until we could find somebody. We have been putting off the decision to hire somebody, and I accepted that as an issue in my first talk. We should have acted on that more quickly, and now we are in the process of acting on that. And it'll be on the January 12th agenda. And does that answer your question? I'm sure.
Partly. What was Sharon's role in supervising the employees?
Thank you. That is an obvious misconception. Sharon is the person who does utility billing. She has taken on the active duties of assisting the Public Works Department as a conduit, as a message taker, as an order of goods and supplies. She is not a supervisor, has never intended to be a supervisor. If anybody misconstrued because she passed on a message thinking she was a supervisor, she was not. We did appoint David Rizza, I always mispronounce the name, I'm sorry, during the hurricane or shortly after the hurricane, to be the foreman in the organization with no increase in pay by then, so that we would have hands-on management during the hurricane period, and he's behaved admirably in that process. But we do have an HR person, and Sharon is not the boss. So that answers two of the comments that I note down here in my notes. So I'm sorry to get that.
Okay, could be the explanation from what I heard from some of the other employees where Sharon was telling them what to do and stuff like that. So your explanation could be, but I'll leave it for the benefit of the doubt.
She is the one that we call. I mean, she's at the office all day. We transmit emails to, so she is the conduit that then would parcel out assignments, and they may misconstrue that she's the boss, but she was just the person to be there physically to relay the messages.
Okay, and David's role as foreman was only during the hurricane cleanup and stuff.
It became obvious that the hurricane overwhelmed us in terms of things that we needed to do. I looked around very quickly, and David was the person that I selected to be the foreman. Again, no increase in pay, but I looked at him to be able to manage at that point, I believe, 3 people that were below him. And he is a working supervisor. I don't mean to say that he sits in the office and does nothing. he didn't give up any of his duties and responsibilities in terms of actually working. So we had 4 people at that time, and he was the one that would answer any questions that other people had as to what their duties and responsibilities were, and he fulfilled that role very well.
Okay. Well, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people around the community and a lot of the previous employees and stuff like that. And it was very obvious that the city has a hostile work environment at Public Works. And to bury it underneath the dirt, to ask for Sherrod to go ahead and turn the resignation so we can get on to do other things, all that's going to do is continue the same stuff over and over and over again. We don't need to continue the hostile work environment that is created out there. It needs to be corrected, and that falls on your shoulders, and it falls on our shoulders because evidently you're not able to handle it. So we know we're in the process of finally getting a public works director hired. Waiting for all the applications to come in and get them done. But in the meantime, we need to do something out there at Public Works to correct the problems that are out there. And we've talked about it numerous times in this commission meetings that our policies and personnel policies and everything needed to be updated and reviewed and everything else like that. And apparently that has not been getting done either. And I know I have talked with you in the past about the need for hiring more employees, and I know the other commissioners will probably agree with me that we need to hire more employees to be able to do the job that is necessary out there, so the burden's not being all piled on top of 1 or 2 people. I've heard a lot of horror stories about the work conditions out there, and some of the people here have expressed them about how we hire lazy people to supervise the hard workers, and how the hard workers are being overburdened with the amount of work. I think a complete review of the public works out there needs to be done. And we shouldn't be laying this all on Sherrod's shoulders. Yes, Sherrod has admitted that he has done some things wrong. And yes, we do have working conditions out there that violate OSHA regulations. And we need to correct it. We need to buy the equipment that they need to be able to do the jobs that they need to do. The Deltona Fire Department, we had a problem years ago, and I know this was one of the issues that we have right now. With the backing of the fire trucks, we've come pretty close and sometimes have occurred that we've damaged people's headways in backing up our trucks. They passed a policy that no truck would be driven in reverse without somebody back there monitoring where the back end of the truck was. Do we have that policy here? No. So when it came back that one of the vehicles had damage to it from apparently backing up, that should have been an indicator that, hey, maybe we needed to address this issue further than just disciplining the employee. You discipline the employee, then you try to do things that correct the problem where it occurred. We're not correcting the problems, we're just disciplining employees. We're losing employees left and right because we're not willing to address the issues that are causing the problems. Let's get the issues addressed. Let's keep Sherrod on the payroll. He's got a lot of supervisory training and everything from his military background. He's got a lot of high work ethic. We've heard a lot of people here talking in his favor and stuff like that. And just burying our heads in the sand and hoping that the problem goes away is not going to solve it. Let's work on the problem and get everything addressed correctly. I'm sitting in the icebox up here, so I hope you know this soon.
I'm sorry. You feel like you're sitting in what?
Icebox.
Oh, okay. Please, sorry. It's nerves, sorry.
No, it's cold.
Did you?
Yes, thank you. So I want to come back to something that Roger said, and maybe you all can clarify for me, Lee, Dominique, whomever. When Sharon was given the directions that were given to her, is there a reason why we couldn't directly communicate those from supervisor to employee? Why there's a middleman?
The employees do not have cell phones, other than their own personal cell phones, which we could use, although I hesitate to, they're not official. They're not, they do have emails, but again, they're out working, they don't really have it, so we do let Sharon be the repository of those instructions, and when they come in, she can relay them to them. Again, she's just a conduit. She also provides, that's just part of it. I mean, she provides all the ordering, the supplies, uniforms, all the things that need to be done in public works. They never have had anybody do that. And so she has waivers to provide those services as well.
So maybe, is there another more effective way that we could communicate the directions to the employees, such as walkie-talkies or?
We did try walkie-talkies, purchased a number of them. And it happened before I was here, and Dominic maybe can speak to that, but we basically had them, they were totally ineffective, they had very short range, batteries wore out. They were just not a good way to communicate with our people. I don't know if you remember that. That's it, okay. But we did try that before, the best way is always been by cell phone. Again, we hesitate to use them, because they're their own personal ones. I had Shiraz as an example, and I've called him a couple of occasions directly, when something came up that needed to be done.
To Roger's point also, hiring more employees, that's been something I know that we've talked about on numerous occasions, and I'm wondering, could we, that might have played into the situation where it's exacerbating the issue, where we have less employees and they're overworked and maybe frustrated. So I'm wondering if that might be playing into this scenario.
First of all, a lot of the public works activities are seasonal. In the summertime, spring, summer, fall, grass is a big deal. Keeping that cut can be almost a full-time job. And then when you get into the fall and the winter, that drops off dramatically. And then you're into the Christmas decoration season, things like that. This year we had the extra added attraction of 2 hurricanes. And we had to station one of our employees full-time. That was Austin the second. For most of it, we did have Sherrod there briefly, and we also had Bob there briefly to check in the loads that were coming in of debris. They had to be visually inspected, they had to be the tickets collected, they had to be photographed, and all 3 of those individuals did that. And that takes, as you can imagine, when you only have 3 or 4 employees, that takes anywhere from 25 to 30% of your work staff just watching trucks come in and out. But it had to be done if we were going to get reimbursement from FEMA. So it was just a necessity that we had to live with.
So I'm wondering, I'm not sure how I'm gonna word this, so I'll be careful. I'm wondering if there's, we've talked about getting a public works director, and the goal is to have it on the agenda for January 12th, right? I'm wondering if maybe we could revisit this situation then, because I know,
Rick was mentioning earlier that putting off the decision until after the holidays may be something that you're agreeable to. And it does seem that because there's no direct supervisor that was working in the field, maybe some of the situation could be misunderstood. That does sound very elegant way of saying my thoughts, but,
Well, let me
most carefully.
let me see if I can help a little bit. We do have 26 applications. I believe that's the correct number. They're coming in still very slowly. And with each application in the newspaper, we are sending that individual an application for city employment and ask them to return it. And when they do, we consider it a completed application. Of the 26, we only had, I believe, 6 or 7 actually returned the application for employment. And those would be the ones I would consider viable applicants, since they were asked to complete the process but had not yet. Now, if they do complete the process, then we'll certainly interview them. And our expectation at this point, given having only 6, is that we'd interview all 6 of the individuals, all the completed applications. Ultimately, the commission is going to be the final judge of who's hired. We will recommend that it's your prerogative, both now we're in the termination phase, and then it'll be the hiring phase. You have both ends of the spectrum. So it would be your responsibility to hire whomever we recommend. We want to give you obviously a good candidate, and there are issues that will have to be dealt with. One of the biggest ones is we purposely listed a superintendent position, not a director, it's a superintendent. We didn't want to give anybody in the application process the idea that they could sit behind a desk and with their feet up and answer the phone and send people out on chores. We do have limited staff, and whoever is in that position is going to be a working supervisor. So we want to make sure that the title reflected somebody who would actually be at least out in the field doing the same thing as everybody else. I think what you're saying is I certainly have no issue whatsoever with you reviewing the applications that we have today. Again, we'll be interviewing and making a recommendation, but if anybody has any other applicants in the wings that have not heard of the application and listened to the meetings, and we said we're advertising, we are still open to any suggestions anybody has for applicants. But we do want to have a good, strong applicant pool, and right now we know we have several more very good candidates, and we'll be going through that list as I indicated.
And maybe I need to reword what I was trying to convey. I'm thinking that once we have a public works director,
Right.
they could review any previous issues that may have come to light
I'm sure
with
they
our
would.
employee, and maybe we could retain our employee until that time
I'm
is
sure they would do just that. I would point out to you, however, that I am, perhaps I feel, from what Roger and the mayor said, getting in the middle of that conversation, I do feel somewhat tied, and I don't want to say anything that would create issues for the city. There are things that you don't know, that perhaps you should know, that would affect your decisions with respect to this process. And all of those things, though, would be dealt with by the new director. But the way our system works, as you know, is if that director does come up with changes, at least if it's in terms of the people involved, they have to go through me and ultimately have to go back to you. So I want to make sure that there's clarity there that with our charter, all of this ultimately ends up in your lap one way or the other, both come and go.
Well, I will say, I do have concerns about the amount of turnover that we've had in the past year. And that is where I'm wanting to pause and make sure that we're doing the right thing by our employees.
to have a lot of turnover does make me question leadership and how we're operating. So I understand that we're talking about one employee in particular, but also it makes me want to pause a bit.
Yes. Let me just, the gentleman said that he overheard Sherrod and I talking. I stuck my head in the window of his truck and said that, I was going to recommend his termination. We do want to hire the best possible people. And we had exceptionally high hopes for Sherrod, I can tell you that. You recall, when we did hire him in the September 8th meeting, this was the individual that some of the members of the commission in question my recommendation, because we were actually offering him more money than he asked for. He wanted $19 an hour, and we offered and recommended to you $20 per hour, because we felt so strongly that he would be a strong asset to the organization. And obviously, best laid plans in my son don't always go the way you want them to go. And I did mention to Sherrod at the same time, or heard in a phone conversation, that I felt very, very badly in having to make this recommendation, because quite frankly, it means that both management and the employee failed. It's not just the employee. And that's why I met, although apparently Sherrod only remembers one time, I did meet her on 4 separate occasions. I can tell you where they were, when they were, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. On those 4 occasions, the sole purpose was to resolve issues that Rod obviously had, and I didn't know what they were. He kept telling me that he's the only one that really was working, nobody else was, and that was difficult for him to live with. Again, I was not able to resolve his issues, and therefore we're here today.
One last, it's just a comment, but it does seem that there's some type of breakdown in our system, and I don't want to put anyone in the position, you or Mr. White, that would be awful, I guess. So I know that if we move forward, I don't want to have, this is not to imply this would happen, but also I've had training to disgruntled employees that could lead us in that situation also. So I'm not sure. I'd like to look at the system and see where the breakdown really is, so that we can move forward and not have these type of issues moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you, commissioners. I did make notes when people were speaking, and there are several things I would like to address. Couple things. Have been several mentions of a hostile work environment. I will say that I haven't seen a more hostile environment than right here in this commission. A lot of that hostility that we have gotten from the podium, that's why we don't have cell phones for the employees, because of what things that were said at that podium by citizens. This hostility isn't in a vacuum. If there is any hostility, it's not in a vacuum. It's not something where you can say one day hostile things and the next day get frustrated that people are hostile. We get a lot of that, almost two-faced criticism. So there is hostility around in the world. The world is not perfect. We are not governed by angels. We are not angels. We have to see systems in place to try and ameliorate as much as possible of the problems that come with the fact that we are just people dealing with people. There's always going to be issues. One comment was made by somebody saying that we had counsel here. Why did we hire a labor lawyer? the labor lawyer who is here today was not retained for this moment. He's working with the city on another thing entirely. He just was here, so we talked to him about it. And I appreciate him being willing to have that conversation with us. Mr. Simpson is a charter officer of the city. As our city attorney, he's always here for us. We didn't hire any attorneys for this meeting today. We hired Mr. Simpson, the city hired Mr. Simpson to represent us at all times and to keep us advised on what the best way to proceed is. And I think when I'm saying our hands are tied, they're not necessarily tied by law so much as tied by counsel. Now, Mr. Simpson hasn't told us what we can and can't say. We're all free people up here. But he's advised us. And that's what I mean with that expression about our hands are tied. I will also say on that yes, the commission's hands are tied in many ways by the nature of the charter office that we hold as commissioners. There's only so much we can do. We cannot supervise. I would love to go out there, throw on a public works hat and work in public works for a few months and see if I can figure it out. I'm sure Mr. Basso could do the same thing. He's supervised crews and done a lot of things like that his whole life. We could weigh in and probably do great things. But as charter officers here on the commission, we can't do that. I cannot directly supervise.
You can't supervise, you can't tell them what to do, but if you want to go out there and spend some time working out there, you're allowed to. The governor of Florida went out and worked with his people in the past, not her.
I thank you for interrupting me again. You're welcome. I let you speak your entire time, and you were wrong several times, and I let you speak. And I would let you speak in the future.
You should go to class also and learn the difference between a hostile work environment and hostile people. They're totally two different things.
I understand that. And I'm sorry you didn't understand my comments. Yeah, there are definitely differences. And the origin of those differences are not necessarily this, what I was, well, never mind. I'm not gonna further beat that horse. Anyway, we have attorneys for a reason. We do have limitations as to what we can do as commissioners. Yeah, I can go work on the city. I have done that many times, and I'm sure you have too. But I can't supervise anybody who is an employee of the city. It's very clear in our charter. The Personnel Review Board that was addressed several times by several comments is something that the city can put together. It is what's the right word? It's a board that can be convened when an employee of the city needs to or wants to have some sort of conflict resolved. It is for a full-time employee who is in good standing, is my understanding, and I may not understand this completely, I'm not an attorney, but it's for a probationary employee, it's not really set up for that. It's set up for resolving disputes with full-time employees. Is my understanding. So the Personnel Review Board, while it is an option for the commission to convene, it is not necessarily available for in this instance. I'm just looking down my list here. I apologize for being a little bit slow on some of this, but we've all said, and we've all been uncomfortable, I think, up here with the way things have gone in public works over the last year. I say the last year because that's when I've been here in this seat. So over the last year, there have been several turnovers in the public works director, and that has made for a very difficult environment here in public works. There's no doubt. And I don't think any one of us have wanted that situation to continue. We've had, each time, we've had somebody, the first several times, the next person was hired and we waited to see how that would evolve and how it would work out. And there've been several disappointments. We can only, try and try again, and each time goes by, and each time that these supervisors have not worked out, there have been additional layers of frustration built in. That's only natural. It's makes it more difficult, and the next public works director we hire will have even more layers of frustration already piled on top of things. They'll have a bigger hole to dig out of. That's the nature of working with humans. It's going to be difficult. I don't think any of us have tried. I know none of us have tried for that. It's just what we have. The hand we have been dealt. Put it that way. We've got to play the hand we're dealt. I don't want that to. I don't want that to overly color everything we do, but it is the reality that we face, and it's the overriding part of it right now. It would be great if we could go back and change that, but we can't. Now we have to decide as commission what to do. Our task under the charter is to hire and or fire and or maybe come up with other ideas. But the recommendation before us from staff is to cease employment of Sherrod White. That's the recommendation of staff coming to this meeting today.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to make a suggestion that may help the commission. Having heard all of your comments and your questions, given the fact it's also the Christmas season, I think it's perhaps in the best interest of the city for me to withdraw my recommendation for the termination of Mr. Weiss, and we are hiring a public works director in the 12th of January with your blessing, and let that gentleman review the work history of Mr. Weiss and Mr. Weiss' performance at that point. In the meantime, bring him back, and he is still unpaid, bring him back for full duties and responsibilities until that time.
Okay, that does change things quite a bit. Commission, do you want to weigh in on?
Is that a paid leave, is that what you're saying?
No, he would be working.
Reinstate?
Oh, he'd be reinstated,
Yeah.
well, he's never been.
Well, okay.
He's been off for 4 or 5 days, but with full pay. I'm suggesting we bring him back starting tomorrow.
I personally feel like that goes a long way towards, to me, solving the other problem. And I mean, no disrespect when I say this, Sherrod. This is just not about Sherrod for me. This is about any employee who's gonna work for Public Works, who they work for. You know, when I was running my company, there was a ladder that I could bring employees in as unskilled labor, and they could work themselves all the way to supervisor's position if they had the skill sets, if they had the tools in their toolbox. And I think what I'm hearing from Sherrod is that there's a sense of confusion as to who's working for who's doing what. And I'm not a micromanager. I'm not gonna come in here and ask you, okay, who's doing this, and who's doing that, who's doing the next thing? Do we have structure in place, blah, blah, blah. That's your job. The only time I'm gonna ask you about that kind of stuff is when I have to sit one of these, okay? Because then somebody's not doing their job. Now, I'm not saying it's you, but it's somebody in the trail. And so until our employees can tell us that they're happy with the chain of command, they know who their direct supervisors are, they're happy with their direct supervisors,
Not that all employees are gonna be happy, and I'm not saying that, but I'm saying broad brush. That's the fix as far as I'm concerned. I don't think we're here if that was, clear in place. And once again, I said earlier that I feel as much responsible for this as anyone else because I didn't push hard enough about getting that new public works director in place. And I didn't push hard enough and making sure that we have an HR officer that we can go to. I don't know if we can afford one, if there's a service that outsources that type of thing. And, that's something that can be looked into. But those are probably the two biggest pieces in this chain that need our attention. Okay? And Sherrod can look in the mirror, he can work on whatever he needs to work on. But I always, when I had an employee that was not working out well, sometimes it wasn't completely the employee's fault. Sometimes it was a supervisor that had to play, and they just voted different, or had different teams that they voted for, or whatever, but it just didn't work. Sometimes you just have to shake hands with people and say, hey, look, before this gets any worse, let's just shake hands, friends, let's move on. So I want to fix the chain, okay? And if that helps fix your audit at the same time, so be it. So I like the recommendation, but I would like to make sure that it's okay to Sherrod, okay? Because I don't know how uncomfortable he may be after all of this is gone through, because he still needs to answer to someone. And does he trust the person that he's answered to? That's internal stuff for staff.
That's a good point. We have a foreman, he would respond to the foreman as he has in the past, until we get a public works.
Yeah, Mr. White, if you would, I was gonna ask you to come up, then I saw you walking forward. Yeah, what do you think of this new idea?
I honestly don't feel comfortable coming back without having a main supervisor to answer to, because it's still a hostile work environment, because I'm working with the same people that originally got me to this situation here, and I just don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I would have a fair opportunity to prove my worth to the organization. So.
Would you be interested in coming back after we bring in a new public works director?
I would, if possible, I would definitely love to be on leave with pay until we have a director. Then I feel like I have a fair chance to show what I have offered to the organization.
Problem with only with pay until our next meeting is January 12th, and then we don't know how long it'll take to actually get somebody on board after that.
Well, let me make a recommendation, let me clarify a little bit here. The administrator came here with a recommendation to terminate. Y'all could have voted no, which meant the next day he needed to come back here to work. Coming up here and saying, I'm not comfortable getting my job back is ridiculous. That's flat out ridiculous. What this city needs to do is say, we're withdrawing our recommendation, Lee goes back, brings him to work. The idea is the new supervisor, public works supervisor, can evaluate Sherrod himself. I don't think there's a person in the city who's paying taxes that wants to pay him to sit home and do nothing. That's ridiculous. So he came here opposing his termination, Lee has withdrawn it, and now he's saying, I don't like that? Seriously? My recommendation is follow Lee's advice, which was actually my advice to Lee. So withdraw his recommendation, let Sherrod come back to work, let the new supervisor evaluate him and consider his whole work history and come up with a recommendation. If Sherrod does not want to come back to work, then he will be viewed as he resigned or quit. I mean, that's what we need to do. That was the question before you. And now he's withdrawn that. So now the ball's in Sherrod's court to come back to work. And if he doesn't want to, that's his choice. But the administrator has withdrew his recommendation for termination, and is going to let the supervisor, we're going to hire, hopefully the 12th, evaluate his performance, and maybe hopefully with a new structure and new supervision, it will all work out. But to sit here and he doesn't have the right not to accept that, because we cannot come back to work. But because the vote is, you could make a vote, and I think I know what the outcome would be, to terminate, and the answer's gonna be no, based on your conversations I've heard. Not had any discussions with anyone else, just based on what I've observed. So that tomorrow he comes back to work. I don't understand what's complicated about this.
I hear you.
So,
I hear
you know, I'm trying to simplify the process, give him an opportunity to work with a new supervisor, get the structure together, and he says he's not comfortable with that. Okay, then, you know, just don't come back. That's simple. So.
Ms. Smith, you have had an opportunity, and I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, I can't reopen the floor, everybody can have a second bite at the apple here.
Okay,
I'll talk to you after the meeting, and.
But this should be something that should be in the general question, because if I was to come back to work, I don't wanna get rolled up for everything, and then
Ms.
you
Smith.
have a reason to fire, I know I'm supposed to be talking and going to my seat, but then you have a reason to fire me, and then I have no room to say anything, but.
Ms. Smith, I'm sorry.
I'm just telling you now, you got that
I
about it.
understand.
You got that
Ms.
about it.
Smith.
Thank God. I love you too, I thank God. Thank God.
I do love you too.
I love you now, thank God.
I would have to agree with Scott that I wouldn't feel right to give Sharon a 4 or 6 week paid vacation when we hire another employee. I would let Sherrod know that coming back, you are protected by state law against retaliations and stuff like that. So if anybody does come back after you, I want to hear about it on this issue, because state law does protect you against it. And I know that's probably why you're hesitant about coming back, because there's so few employees in public works, and you are coming back to the same people that were here before you left. So I understand it, but just realize you are protected by state law, and I'll stand by it. I'll stand behind you if they use anything against you.
No. No. No, I don't want to reopen public comment to people who have already spoken.
To be honest with you, there's nothing, the administrator has withdrawn his recommendation, so there's really nothing for y'all to take action.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. So, everybody has had opportunity to speak. I appreciate hearing from all the commission. I know we rubbed up on each other a little bit, and quite a few times. I just want to say, it's not that I don't respect you, I just disagree with you sometimes, but I love you too, and yeah, we could, we're allowed to. So the recommendation has been withdrawn by staff to terminate or employment of Mr. Rockaway. So we don't have anything to act on, as our attorney has said. Gerard, I would like to talk to you some. I know we've talked before, and I know I'm not your supervisor, and I can't pretend to be that. Commissioner Eckert's right, you do have all the protections provided to everybody who works for anybody of the state law. You shouldn't be in a hostile work environment. You shouldn't feel like you can't have anyone to turn to. We do want to be a good place to work. And I know we've had.
I've got a question on this, and I don't know the answer to this, Scott, what you do. If an employee wants to vent, is there anything to stop them to pick the phone up and calling any commissioner and venting?
No.
I didn't think so. So if you don't have my number, get it. If you ever have a complaint, call me. I ran a construction company my whole life. I've been in underground utilities and public works, that kind of stuff. So I know what you're doing, and I'll listen.
The
I'll
only
always
thing,
tell you which one here, but I will definitely listen.
the only thing the charter would prohibit is actually you giving direction, to the employee to do something, but you being a conduit for an employee to then go and talk to whoever the administrator, probably the administrator is the best place to go to. Is there nothing in the law, the charter that prohibits that?
And hopefully it might even be helpful working out some of those links in the chain, if you will. And I have to use the restroom, and I have to leave.
It's okay. Well, we're not gonna take any further action. If you need to go, you can go. Yeah, we're just gonna wrap up a few more words. Mr. White, if you'd like to.
I'll take the job. I'll take the job. Who would I be answering? So at least I'll know who I'm answering to.
You will still ultimately be answering to the city administrator.
So that's my supervisor.
Yeah, he is the top of the chain. Let me put it that way. There's a chain of command. He's the top of the chain as far as direct supervision, but he reports on public works foreman. The public works foreman right now, which is.
Always been the supervisor.
Okay. So, and as Roger said, and Rick said, any of us are available. And we do want this to work out. I promise you, we want this to work out, and maybe we can find a way. I really pray. And if we apply ourselves, I think we can. I pray we can. So, any further comments?
Just the same, you know, if you ever need to talk to someone, you know, get my number, please give me a call. Happy to.
Thank you. And thank you for, you've behaved very professionally and respectfully today in this commission chamber, and I appreciate that. I do. It's not easy, it's not easy getting up and talking here. I understand, and thank you for doing this. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.